Ave cohort, we are back. It is Saturday, which means it is time for Pilum Teaches DCS. We got a lot to cover today. We're going to be covering pretty much all the weapons that you see there. This is Phase 3, which is going to be guided weapons. Looking at the AGM-12 Bullpup, the AGM-45 Shrike, the AGM-62 not quite a missile but guided bomb, the Walleye, AGM-65 Maverick, the GB-8 Hobos, the Teen Series for the GBUs, the 10, 12, and 16, and the GBU-24, and how those are different from the previous three. We're also going to talk about the bombing computer. Get used to that because it's kind of an integral part to the jet, and if you're not using it today, you'll really sharpen your game if you start. But there's also the electronic flight bag that we can talk about that shows some quality diagnostics and other important information when that is available for your jet. So let us go ahead and flip things over here so that you can see what's going on. And we will start as we always do with a walk around our jet. We're going to be starting with the Shrikes and the Mavericks today. So on our outer pylon, we're carrying identical Shrikes. These are tuned to the, I believe, Mark 50 Mod 1 seeker head, which will allow us to target SA6s, SA3s, and while it is not listed, it will track SA8s as well. And we should be knocking down an SA8 here with the Shrike today. On our special rails, where you can carry a single Maverick, we are carrying a mixed loadout. One of these is an AGM-65A, and the other is a B. Functionally, these missiles are the same, whether they are the A variant, the B variant, the D variant, or the G that is capable to be carried on the rail without the sidewinders, because it doesn't have a special rail option for the heavier Maverick. So, while I'm not going to use all of the Mavericks available on the jet individually, we will talk some of the differences with the AGM-65D and its infrared seeker head that has 2 modes of zoom, as well as the CCD version that is the later variant of the Golf model. Fuel tank in the center line, defensive armaments for sidewinders and sparrows for the just in case, and a mirrored Shrike loadout on the other side. To answer Chief there, we've got some Black Rifle Company coffee this morning of a vanilla flavor. Take a good healthy sip there. Our target area for today is going to be our usual stomping ground, which is to say up here at Yucca Pass, where we have our Shrike victim, the SA-8, some of his friends, and we've got some other vehicles that are in play, as always, to absorb the hits from our other weapons. You're not wrong, Chief. I'm doing this one in a way that when I put them on YouTube, I can just kind of string these 4 videos together, and you can watch them one after the other as a separate thing. Plus, people seem to like the F-4, so it's always an opportunity to interact live with folks, too. All right, let's go ahead and unpause it. And we have a new throttle that we're working with today. Let's put our helmet on. Which is a VKB brand throttle that I've been very much enjoying as of yesterday when I've put it all together.
Canopy down and locked. Lights out and stripes are aligned.
Now, something we are going to be talking about today that we have not talked about before is the electronic flight bag and some of its diagnostic capabilities there for us. Wait for Jester to complain about the fact that thinks we might be flying low today.
we planning to hit the deck on this one?
I'm just not going to answer him today. Take that, Jester. Alright, let's turn his volume down just a bit. Go and snooze the first round of ads here as we talk about the electronic flight bag while we're taxiing here. This is accessible by default by hitting right control I. And what it does is it pulls up a page where it is enabled by the mission editor, because this is a feature that they can disable. And we've got 3 pages here across the top. Right now we're on the engines page, which is showing us the current outdoor temperature and RPM settings for both engines. Intake air temperature is 27 degrees Celsius. Combustion chamber temperatures. And the exhaust gas temperature. As well as the amount of force being produced by the engines in kilonewtons. We can also see our fuel cells, how they are arranged about the jet, and how they are being used. And these gateways for each of these individual pumps will close and open as fuel is transferred between the cells. So we have our centerline fuel tank. If we had our left and right fuel tanks, you'd see those on there as well. Wing tanks. Cell 1 that feeds the engines directly, that's the feeder tank. And then all of the other associated tanks that are tied up with it, including the reserve tank at the very end of the jet. And then if that wasn't enough, we've also got the electronics page. We can kind of see that, you know, the battery is currently generating. Essential equipment, main bus, armament safety. But yeah, it is. It's been a rough couple of months here as we've had to bounce around a lot, cover for people at work, that kind of deal. Yeah, just the electronic feed as to where things are going and what they're doing. Like if I were to engage the master arm and select some pylons. Let's go ahead and change our mode over to a ARM. I'm going to stop here and there. Oh, you know what, the ground safety's on because we're on the ground. So we'll take care of that in the air. I don't know what all the other symbology is on that one just yet, because I've only just started really working with that page. There does seem to be some desync with it in multiplayer, unfortunately, so while it is accessible for the Wizzo, it does not show accurate information. Nose is coming up. And we're flying. No, I'm not. I don't think I'm going to do any probe and drogue with it, but that is an option that you can use by editing the Lua file now. Okay, there we go. We see that the armament safety. No, you know what? I don't think it updates in real time. That's interesting. It's showing me information. It doesn't flip the little breaker here for the arm safety. Unless it keeps them energized for a little while. That might be interesting too. Well, I mean, it's kind of fitting for like what they did with the F-100. You know, same sort of concept.
Mud on our nose, 12 o'clock.
It's just like the commercial says, AAA and on you go. All right, so while we are climbing out here and cruising our way up, we're going to talk about the bombing computer and how it applies to some of our guided weapons, as we're going to be firing the Shrikes first. We've covered this before, but it is of critical importance, especially if you're going to be trying what we're going to be doing today, which is a loft shot with the AGM-45 Shrike. Access the bombing computer first by pressing right control and B. That's Bravo. And our mode of delivery is going to be WRCS AGM-45. This is only for the loft mode of the missile. It's going to ask you for the target's altitude. There's a few ways that you can go about trying to determine this one, but all of them involve looking at the map. And basically what I tend to do with this one is, if I know where the target is supposed to be, I'll try and get as precise a read as possible. Come out here, put a little map, mouse over the little place there, and we can see that it is 3,954 feet for its altitude. If I didn't know where exactly that system is, and I'm trying to take an educated guess, step one is to try and determine where the system is actually hiding. So if I were fighting one that was out in the field and I knew that, somewhere out here along this road is where that system is, I can make a good estimate that like 3,100 and maybe 60, 70 feet is probably going to catch me most of this road. So it is kind of an estimate, but you want to be as close as you can get with your estimate in order to make sure that your missile is going to get the right loft information. So in this case, we're going to look at, sure this is moving around here a little bit, 3955, so 39, oop. Click into it again. And we are just going to go ahead and round that one there. It's going to be a little difficult for your Wizzo to dial in an exact number of feet. Thank you for the resub, Chief. So if you can get within about 10 or so, we will tell Jester and close that. And we're going to go ahead and talk about the two different modes for the Shrike, because it can be fired in two different modes. Mode 1 is direct, which kind of is what it sounds. Point the weapon at the target, squeeze the pickle button, missile comes off the rail. The one that we're executing today is a loft attack, which is really what we want to try and use against some of the more dangerous SAMs or against known SAM system threats. And we want to try and throw this weapon from as far away from the SAM site in question as possible. The Shrike is not a fast missile. In almost every circumstance, the Shrike is going to be fired after you have been shot at. And so that changes how you attack certain targets.
Got a new bogey, left 30, 44 miles.
Now, in this particular case, we're looking at an SA-8. We can actually outrange him a bit with a loft shot.
Good IFF, user friendly.
Which is good for us. And it means we can throw this weapon in relative safety. The SA-8 is a prime target for something like Shrike because whether it is using its track radar or its search radar, both radars use the same seeker head or seeker band for the radar, and so the Shrike is tuned to it and will guide all the way down. Something like an SA-3, if it's tuned to the low blow, which is the dangerous radar, that's the one that you want to kill. If low blow stops looking at you, the Shrike stops guiding because it relies upon and depends upon active radar emissions from the target in order to guide to the target. Now on the plus side, if your loft was good and everything else, ballistically speaking, that weapon should be very close to where it needs to go. So even if it doesn't hit, if you've got the Willie Pete charge added to it, you can see a small white smoke marker for about a minute.
Damn, we've got mud. 11 o'clock. SA 6.
SA-6 is over this way. We're not going to look at him just yet.
Left 35, 38 miles, 19,000.
I want to shoot at the 8. And the 6 is going to potentially be a problem for us. And if he is, we'll shoot at him too. In fact, why don't we go ahead and just do that? He's actually out here, which changes our altitude to 35-58 feet. If you decide to change targets midstream, make sure you update your WRCS panel. If you got a human wizzo, tell him to do it or her to do it. And if you're using Jester, make sure you update it. All right, now before we get too close, I'm going to pause briefly. So what we have is the flight director turned on, which is important for Shrike, because what that's going to do is give us the same needles like we would see for a landing approach, except these are tuned to the Shrike that you have selected, and the cross and its accompanying audio tone is going to tell you when you're pointed at the missile system. This is important, as the missile system is like right about there, just outside this town. We can't quite see him yet because we're still a good healthy distance away. Actually, no, it's slightly right. So there is a little town here, and there's a little one that's hiding over here in the clouds. So he's going to be like in here somewhere. We're going to turn and look at him here in just a minute. But if you don't know exactly where that system is to visualize it, depend on this instrument. Line it up with the W, the top peak of the W there, when you're all centered up. Because Shrike has a narrow seeker head. It's only about 3 degrees wide, so it does have to be pointed close to the target to start with. But the other thing that we're doing, because there's a onboard mechanical computer with the F-4, the WRCS is telling us where the other points in the triangle are for the math involved with, here's your pull-up queue, the missile is going to travel this far, this fast, at this climb angle, and then it should fall on top of the target and achieve guidance. So long as you're pointing your nose initially at your target, the WRCS altitude programmed is accurate, and you've got good tone and guidance and are pointing at the proper target. All right, so let's go ahead and unpause. Come slightly right here. And what we're waiting on is our indexer to light up. I'm zoomed in here a little bit so you can see that. So when the indexer lights up, it's going to basically be your pull-up cue. You're going to move in the direction that it tells you to. So if the chevron is pointing up, you need to pull up. If the chevron is pointing down, you need to nose down. And you're going to maneuver the aircraft until you are in a good indexer position, which is the circle. There's the sight itself. He might shoot at us first. If he does, we're going to defend. And we'll pop back up and take another shot at him. Here's our... Nope. Give me the cue again. And he's fired. And I'm in handoff mode there for a moment. Almost done with the external tank. Ourselves some speed here. And just waiting on the indexer. There it is. Nose is coming up. Pickle button is held down. And Magnum. I'm just going to assume I've been shot at. I'm in handoff mode now for the RWR, because I've got that bound to a stick button for me. But that high tone PRF is him definitely hitting us with his track radar. Straight flush is another very solid target, because just like the SA-8, the straight flush has a combined radar setup. As we can see, the Shrike is wobbling down towards it. I believe it's got good guidance. And then just in case we wanted to follow up on that site, Before we go try and do the same thing to the SA-8 here. Try and turn around towards the that SAM site. So we can try and look at that Willie P charge. Of course, the clouds might be in our way there and not be terribly favorable. It's kind of obscured by the black smoke of the destroyed SAM radar. But that can be a good marker for us too. I do like to start my loft shots from about 15,000 feet or more, because we do have a little bit of a dive that's involved as we're trying to maintain that good crosshair position. That's Yucca Pass there.
Alright, got a new bogey. Right 15, 25 miles, 17,000.
We can roll out here to the left and come at this from the south. So we got a nice clear shot on that SA-8's position. The other thing that I tend to do when I'm trying to line up my strike shots is I will use the RWR where I can. But it should be noted that while the SA-8 and the SA-6 will give you their search information, as we noticed with the SA-6, it did not give me a launch warning. There are a lot of radars for the F-4 that will not give you a launch warning, and the best that you can do is to switch to this handoff mode and try and listen for when the PRF changes from the usually lower pitched search beep to a much higher pitched track beep, and then use your best judgment to decide whether or not you've been shot at. In most cases, when you hear that high pitched whine, you either imminently in a position of being shot at or have been shot at already. Every aircraft makes its own PRF sound, and I would encourage you to either go to places where you know what the aircraft is that's looking at you from a very specific direction, and then listen to it in PRF mode. Or build a mission where you can do exactly that too. Let me cycle through some of the targets here. Like these here are MiG-21s, because I've removed all the MiG-19s from the map. So in a deep distance, and that's a MiG-21's radar operating in the search mode. When he goes to lock you up, that pitch will go from that tone to about an octave or so higher. So it'll be the same pitch. Well, it'll be a higher pitch, but at the same frequency, or a similar frequency, where it will sound like a higher pitch version of the same tone. And that's your cue between the two. Otherwise, there's a lot of aircraft that do not provide you with launch warnings for when you've been shot at. And a lot of SAM sites that fall in the same boat. Some of the older ones, like the SA-2 and the SA-3, that the F-4E was very much designed to fight against. Well, I say designed to fight against, that's not true. It was an interceptor through and through, adapted to fight against. Because those were very prevalent throughout Vietnam. So those sites will give you a launch warning. It'll let you know. MiG-21s will give you a launch warning and let you know when they've shot a radar-guided missile at you. Obviously not an infrared one. That is something to keep in mind. All right, let's turn towards our SAM site so we can clearly see the area now. I had to get around that cloud. Now we're going to get intermittent pulses because it is a SA-8. And there's where it should be, so holding the pickle button down, pulling the bump stick back. Trying to keep myself steady. And Magnum. All right, and while we were flying away from him, see how our missile's doing. Due to the intermittent nature there, he did not find him this time. So it is just kind of going ballistic, but again, is a situation where it'll be close. I have had success against SA-8s in loft mode, but because the search radar kind of twitches when it pulses around there, it's not as steady and stable as the SA-6s is. Sometimes it can miss in key moments like that where it doesn't quite pick it up. Alright, so let's go ahead and reset for our Mavericks because we're going to need to use our Maverick to take care of that SA-8, which is possible. And we're going to do that by selecting direct mode for our weapon delivery mode and TV for our weapon selector and activating the appropriate pylons. And then we wait 3 minutes. Last part's a little non-negotiable, as it does take a little bit of time for the weapons to come online and get their seeker heads ready to work. But while they're doing that, we'll ease on the power a little bit and get ourselves set up for success. We're going to first dial our reticle down to 45 mil dots depression, as this is going to align our pipper with the seeker head of the Maverick. We're also going to select TV mode for our display. And what we're waiting on is the arm lights to appear underneath the pylons, which tells us that the Mavericks are ready to go. I'm actually going to select my left pylon first, as I believe that is the 65 Bravo with its 4x fixed zoom seeker head. The difference between the A and B variants of the Maverick is that the A variant has a fixed unzoomed seeker head, while the B has a fixed 4x zoom seeker head in narrow field of view, basically. The Delta variant of the Maverick and the Golf variant of the Maverick, you can use the front trigger to toggle between near and far field of view, but it's basically giving you the same zoom settings. Maverick has an effective locking range of approximately 10 nautical miles. With good contrast and a larger target, you might be able to get a little bit more than that. as that's what the TV is looking for. The D variant uses infrared targeting, so if your target is extremely hot, you might be able to pick it out a little bit further than that. And our weapon is armed. We've activated the front trigger, which puts our display up here. We can tell this is a B model Maverick because we have the 4 dots around the cross. That is a giveaway that you were using that weapon system. And the way that this one works is that you press and hold your air refueling disconnect, and then you can use the hand control unit like you would use for the bullpup missile, which we'll be using here in a little bit, to slew the seeker head around. You then release the air refueling disconnect button, which will then tell the Maverick to attempt a contrast lock on whatever's underneath the crosshair. When it captures, those 4 dots will reset themselves to be tight around the target to indicate that you got a good capture, and you should notice that the screen follows your target regardless of the movement of the aircraft. At that point, it is ready to fire. Let's go ahead and get sighted in for Yucca Pass. We're going to try and find that SA-8 site, because he's going to be our most dangerous threat down there. And I do also like to look outside the window. He should actually be right here in between the split of the cloud. You can kind of see him out there.
Mark on our nose, 12 o'clock. SA-8.
And at this point, I'm just holding down the air refueling button. You'll hear it click a bunch of times as I click it and let it go. As we are attempting to lock onto our target. There we go, and rifle. And we'll bring up our A model Maverick next. You can tell it's an A model because it's got the very wide cross there on it. Maverick is a very slow missile. It's a good missile as the air-to-ground missiles go. It is, one of our first fire and forget missile systems for air-to-ground. The immediate successor, the bullpup, when folks realized that MAC-loss guidance was not the way to go. We may have actually locked onto a different location. In a different vehicle or building. These clouds hit our target from us. This looks like we'll have a clear shot here. We'll try and catch him with the A model. He's going to be right about in here. Yeah, it's hooking the building. There we go. Rifle. And we'll turn away. Turn away very fast. No, it's because he shot at us. But he's dead. One of the advantages that the Maverick system has is that you don't need to worry about the WRCS at all. It operates completely independent of that. One of the disadvantages of that system, however, is its very long lead time before it is able to be utilized. Let's go ahead and set up for a trip back to Creech, which I think is 87 X-ray. Top off on some gas.
Alright, got a bogey. Left 30, 37 miles, 19,000.
And we will bring up our next set of guided weapons to play with. The big thing about the Maverick is that it is functionally identical to how you employ that weapon, regardless of which series of Maverick you're using. The difference really comes down to what zoom options do you have available and what imaging options is it using. You can swap contrasts. I believe for the pilot it is the missile reject switch. It's right here, where you can toggle between a lighter dark contrast option. The Wizzo has a proper white, black, or auto contrast setting. And we're actually very close to Creech. Throw that speed brake out here. And I'm reminded of another keybind that I need to make. Bum, bum, bum. Boop. Boop. I like having that on the HOTAS, so I can just set it and be good to go. Okay. Gear and flaps are good. We are a little heavy. 6,000 pounds on board the jet. Grab it in just a little bit here.
Alright, gear, flaps, pressure, warning lights, and annex gear.
So wind is actually blowing across Creech, where it is blowing down Nellis. That sure felt like we had good chute deployment. Clean things up here. Cross the active. Leave our drug behind for the chute monkeys. Let them clean up all the FOD. And as we're the only jet using anything here today, bump our seat back down to where we should be. And let's get rearmed for the next mission. Bullpups come in 3 flavors. There's not really a whole lot of difference between the A and B variant. They both carry the same sort of charge weight. They just use different propellants for their engines. We'll be taking the B variant, AGM-12 bullpups. And we're going to forego our sidewinders for this one, as I'm going to be carrying the heavier Walleye 2s. Walleyes come in 2 flavors, 1,000 pound and 2,000 pound. We're going to be using the bigger ones. Trying to think of what else I could get away with on this one pass. No, I think that's heavy enough. I don't want to put a hobos on one of my outboard pylons and then attempt to try and get rid of it, because that's not going to go over too well.
Request refueling. Request rearming.
I can kind of see why this gauge works so much quicker when we're under 10,000 pounds. As it is refueling all the fuel cells simultaneously. But once some of them are topped up, it takes a little longer to pump the gas around. Well, it's good to know that it's also refueling the external tank at the same time. I always thought it took it a minute for that to trickle into it. It's fun. I've not actually watched this page before. Well, it's been refueling. It's a lot of handy information as far as how those cells deplete and how they restore. Partially filled centerline tank. But more than enough for our purposes. Alright, so we are carrying the big boy walleyes, walleye 2s, and AGM-12 bullpup. Reset our takeoff trim. And I'm going to start with the walleyes first, as it's going to take a little bit of time for those to warm up. As just like with Maverick, it is an electro-optical weapon, so it takes it a little bit of time to start up. So we're going to go ahead and set our delivery mode to direct, and our weapon selector to TV. And we're going to select those pylons, and turn the master arm on. Okay, it remembered from the Maverick. So apparently it just is on there for us. But if it is a cold start, you've not used the weapons before, they do take the same about 3-minute window of time to get themselves situated.
Airspeed off the peg. 80 knots. There's 100. At least the takeoffs wake me up. Oh, man.
Went quite a bit of left rudder there to try and keep straight on the runway. We're a little bit heavier than we were before.
All right, I got nailed 8 o'clock.
Well, we are up. Now these we want to set to 17 mils. for a reticle depression. It's going to roughly align to the seeker head on the walleye or the GB8. As these weapons both use electro-optical guidance, just like Maverick. Walleye you're going to get a lot more wiggle room out of in terms of how far away you can be. But despite the fact that it is listed as an AGM-62, it has no motor, so it is not actually a missile. It'd be a little more apt to call it like a GB-62 or a guided bomb. But it's got big old wings on it, which will allow it to glide a fair distance. So you can get a little bit of extra standoff from that, as long as the contrast seeker head can find its target. Arm lights have come on, so the weapon is ready for employment. Again, bombing computer, not necessary for this weapon, as it is just looking for a contrast lock, and it'll go from there. Now, the important things to understand about hobos and walleye is that they really don't give you indicators for range whether or not you are in good parameters. It is possible to lock a target far enough away that your bomb may not have the energy to get to where it needs to go.
Okay, Niels, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock?
So my advice is to try and locate and attack your targets from about 7 miles out, and the higher the altitude, the greater your range. Airspeed also plays a factor.
You bet. Diversion steering set.
We're about 17 miles out from the target, doing about 300 knots indicated, and climbing through 16,000 feet. The advantage that Hobos has is that you can carry it on any pylon except the center line that can carry a Mark 84. So you can carry up to 4 of the 2,000-pound class Hobos. The walleye, however, with its big old glidey wings and package and everything else on it, the outer pylons can only carry walleye 1, which is the smaller 1,000-pound class, and your inner stations can carry walleye 2. Advantage is though is you get a little bit more range out of walleye than you do GB8. Again, subject to the contrast lock of your target. Okay, so the next most dangerous thing that we have down here at this site is the Shoka battery that we can kind of see center frame just to the left of that tan pentagonal structure. So let's go ahead and get ourselves looking that way. And get our pipper on the target. We're basically going to align the center of that cross up with our target area and then press and hold front trigger. And when it has a good contrast lock, you'll see that it jumps. And then we've got this little black box. That black box is indicative of the seeker head of the weapon out to its limits. So we can get ourselves back up to about level flight, press the pickle button, and bombs away. And the weapon is now fire and forget. No longer have to worry about guiding it. It is very heavy, so I can't just kind of safely watch it the whole way through without the aircraft potentially heeling its way over, so we'll have to jump back and forth a little bit. And as we can see, it is going right down there for that target area. And kersplat. Drilled the Terminator right through the front plate. We do have one more of these, so we're going to attack the radar-directed gun batteries next, which are also out by that little pentagonal structure. Pipper into the target area. Swap my gaze down to the lower sight screen. Pickle. Go ahead and put the bottom bar up here a little bit. We can see it's moving 520 knots, indicated airspeed. It's cruising its way along. Going right for the gun position. Might actually be a big enough blast to take them all out. And those are done. So now we come up to our next guided weapon, which is the AGM-12 Bullpup, which has its own weapon selector position on the dial. And these are fired in direct mode as well. And the thing that we have to understand about Bullpup, and this is where I'm going to pause for a moment, I'm going to talk about this weapon here. We've got these two large red sections on either end of the engine motor. Flares deploy from those, very bright ones. And it's also got a radar receiver in the tail that is paired to a radar transmitter in the jet that is in turn tied to this hand control unit that we were using a little bit ago to sight in our Mavericks. Bullpup is a manual command line of sight or MACLOS guided weapon, which means that you yourself have to guide the weapon all the way to the target, which gives you an effective maximum range in theory of approximately 10 nautical miles, but in practice probably closer to 5 or 6. There are other Heapler aircraft that also use this. The Viggen has MACLOS guided anti-ship missiles, which were very efficient for the purpose, the RBO-5, I believe. Heavy warhead and a whole 9 yards. The Bullpup is a little bit lighter on the warhead end of the fence. And being a manual command-guided weapon, you do have to follow the weapon down yourself and provide steering inputs because it will not do it for you, which does not make it a fire and forget weapon. You have to have positive control over it pretty much all the way to the ground. Disadvantages with that system: Vietnamese gunners were able to basically go, there's a smoke trail there, I'm just going to shoot up along it and have good odds of hitting the aircraft that fired it, and therefore stopping the guidance. American pilots in turn began to fire the weapon and offset slightly left or right so that they can avoid that kind of incoming fire from anti-aircraft gunners. But ultimately what ended up needing to happen was a fire and forget weapon had to be designed, which led us to Maverick. So let's go ahead and employ this weapon system. Advantages of this weapon system, though, is that it is quick to come online. It does not have the same 3-minute spool time that a Maverick does. And if you know how to employ it, you can get some very solid results out of the system. You can only steer one at a time, So I don't think you're going to be ripple firing these things. It's pretty much going to be one pass per missile. And our target for this is going to be the Sparka battery out here. I do like to aim slightly above the target. It takes it a moment after you push the pickle button for it to come off. But now the missile is under control and I am steering it with the axis. Trying to keep the glow there on top of the target. And we achieved impact. A little bit of mixed results there. Initial damage. We'll have to follow up with another shot to make sure that site is destroyed. Thankfully, though, Mr. Sparka is a little low and slow when it comes to being able to spit shells at us there. That said, I can promise you, he probably still is shooting at us. Okay, we've employed bullpups. Let's go ahead and land again. And we will grab the hobos and some GBUs with a targeting pod. We'll be making use of the pave spike pod on board the jet, and also that bombing computer again. They're fun weapons to use, but they can be a little limited. Like we can see here, we put 2 hits very close to these targets. We achieve some damage, a little bit of destruction, but this battery is still very much in operation. You do want to try for direct hits with bullpup. The bigger your target, the better, as you can see it from further away. However, there is a heavier bullpup. The bullpup C can be carried on the inner pylons, which has a much higher weapon weight and a much bigger yield. We're set up for TACAN navigation en route back to Creech. Hobos and GBUs are next. We'll use the GBU 12. And again, similar to Maverick, the GBU Teen series, the 10, the 12, and the 16 all use the same sort of guidance and each operate in a very similar way. I think we'll try and sneak on a GBU 24 as well. That'll make us a little lopsided. But should still be able to get our point across there with that. As the hobos is very similar to walleye in terms of how it's employed and what we need to do to get that weapon off the rail. We have an ad break that's starting up here in about a minute for folks that are subjected to those. We're not going to be doing anything too fancy, just going to be coming into land and rearming the aircraft.
Alrighty, gear, flaps, pressure, warning lights, anti-skid.
Okay, for those of you who are still with us, thank you for subscribing. Appreciate that. Ad break is almost over there for folks. Cruise on down here. I'll drop our drogue chute again. And get re-equipped for the next guided weapon. Okay, so we can carry the hobos over there. A pair of GBU-12s there. Sidewinders because it looks cool.
Request refueling. Request rearming.
We'll watch our refueling page here with the electronic flight bag. And open the refueling door so we can get those other pumps working too. No faults in the armament at the moment. Engines and engines temperatures are looking all right. I find the fuel page to be probably one of the most useful, although the engine page can let you know if you run the risk of having some engine ice collect from being up super high where it's super cold. Close that page real quick. All right, so we're carrying a new piece of equipment now, the Pave Spike Pod. Now this one is not the fast track, which means it doesn't have the better motor in it to get a little bit better performance out of the steering on it, but we will make that work. We're also carrying the GB8 hobos. Which is more or less a Mark 84 with a guidance package strapped to it. And some slightly bigger fins on the back. And then the GBU-24, as that does have some differences compared to the Teen Series GBUs that you might be a little more familiar with using. Hobos is on our right wing. We're going to start with him. And as before, we're going to set that to TV and direct. We won't need the bombing computer for that, but we will need it for the other weapons that we've got. In fact, since I know I'm going to be using that, and I know I'm going to be fighting the jet until I get that other 2,000-pound bomb off the wing, I'm going to go ahead and brake here for a moment. And we are going to preemptively set up our bombing computer. So we're going to come up to the bombing table again, and we are going to use target find, because that is the mode that we're going to assign, or be using rather, to drop laser guided bombs. We're going to select the type of weapon that we're using. In this case, it's the GBU-24. And on the top end of the bombing table, what we have are inputted statistics about what you want to have happen. And the middle bar here is derived statistics, which is going to take the inputs that you put in up here and convert them into things to program into the computer down here. Generally speaking, a good run-in speed of 450 knots true airspeed. It uses true rather than indicated, which is an important distinction, as your indicated airspeed will look like it is less as you increase altitude, but your true airspeed is like a ground airspeed track, or how fast you're moving over the terrain. Our release altitude, probably going to drop this one at about 15,000 feet, at least that's the plan. And our target altitude, again, just like with the WRCS, we're going to come out here and kind of inspect the zone. I think the 24 I'm going to use on these Sparka batteries because they're a little scattered, but not too much. And that is approximately 4,040 feet. And you can kind of say that for most of the region around here. It kind of ebbs and flows right around that. Let's go ahead and dial in our altitude for 4,040 feet, which gives us these derived statistics. This is what I would tell my Wizzo as far as what I want to have set up. Set the drag coefficient correctly, which takes into account your release altitude. If I dial this release altitude up, it will change the drag coefficient. If I dial this altitude down, it will also change the drag coefficient. The bomb will have an approximate range of about 18,000 feet, and the slant range that we want the pod set to is going to be 18,696 feet.
Wilco.
Tell Jester and close, so he can go ahead and program that for us. That information is not necessary to the hobos, but it is necessary for the pod to give us proper release cues to make sure that we're dropping that bomb from far enough away that we can successfully continue to track it with the pave spike pod. Now that that's set up, we're going to go ahead and use our GB8 first. Which, honestly, I might use the GB8 on those Sparka batteries. We'll see how we do. Might find a different target for it. Maybe something that's a little set aside, like the tanks there is always a good choice. Now the GB8 and the GBU-24 do have slightly different weights, so it's probably not going to be a takeoff that we can just, I don't know, let physics and balance take its course on. We'll have a little bit of offset that we might need to trim out. And since we are carrying some heavier, bulkier weapons, I'm going to go ahead and give myself a little bit more room on the runway prior to takeoff. Setting myself for takeoff trim down there in the lower left corner underneath the canopy handle.
You're too fast. Man, the CO will bust their balls for that. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Engine good, airspeed off the peg. 100 knots.
Apparently we were a little far back that Jester incorrectly decided that we were not on the runway.
Nails.
There we are up. Gear and flaps coming up. We're back in the TV camera mode. This is what we're also going to use for the targeting pod. Pretty much all of the electro-optical equipment that's available on the jet outside of the Maverick uses a pipper setting of 17 mils. That's going to roughly align the pipper with the position that the bore-sided position of the pod, the GB8 seeker head, the walleye seeker head are all looking. Mavericks are 45 mils to get the same result. It's important to try and set yourself up that way and to get into good habits with that. Even if you're operating with the human Wizzo,
2 o'clock, 3 o'clock.
you can quickly take control of that pod and steer it around a little bit. The biggest reason for it is that if you can make it easier on your Wizzo to find your target, they can get the pod moving, looking, doing what it needs to do, get the Maverick on target, whatever it is they got to do, while you focus on flying the plane. Because this isn't like a modern aircraft where you've got the super modern pod that's got all these computers and electronics and everything built into it, where you can just go, hey, this waypoint that I programmed over here, I want you to look at it, and it'll just go, yep, I see it. And start finding targets from 20, 30 miles out. And this is a very much a hands-on cooperative sort of aircraft. And everything you can do to make your Wizzo's job easier is going to make your job easier. When we do eventually get the DMOS upgrade for the F-4, we should be able to actually steer the walleye seeker head around from the back seat So you can get a lot more flexibility out of that in terms of looking for a target, capturing a target, and guiding to a target. But for now, the walleye is very much a pilot's weapon affair. There's not any input from the weapons systems officer for that system. GBA doesn't quite have the same sort of glide range as the walleye. Something to keep in mind. Is just as heavy as a walleye 2, and you can carry it in more places on the jet than the walleye 2. But it does not quite have the same reach as the walleye 2 on account of the lack of fins. Lack of wings, really, on that one. All right, we are nearing our target area, so I'm going to go ahead and offset here a little bit with my nose so I get my claustrophobic cluster of instruments out of the way. And start looking out the window for all of our landmarks. We return to Yucca Pass. The runway's the big one. And there's the cloud getting out of our way. Offset again here a little bit. I don't want to get any closer than what we are right now, so we can find our target fairly quickly. There's our target area. Get our pipper right about the crossroads is where that Sparka battery should still be. Well, they have deployed and shifted a little bit. That's looking good. We've captured the target same way we would with the walleye. We're holding the trigger down. Black box there is indicative of the gimbal limits, or the current position rather, of the seeker head of the GB8. And then pickle. And as we are a little bit heavy, a little hard to watch the bomb, but we'll try it here. Myself in the level flight here, and there we go. It is guiding, and it's trying, but it is going to fall short because it is not a walleye. You do have to get quite a bit closer to successfully employ that weapon. Make sure it's got the energy to get to your target. Alright, now do you want to get rid of this other heavy bomb, so let's go ahead and pull up our GBU-24. We're going to select Target Find and Bomb. And now we are looking through the Wizzo with the targeting pod. There are a few keybinds here that are important, and we're going to pause here very briefly and look at those. And that is the Wizzo antenna hand control trigger, half action, full action, challenge button, and the antenna hand control unit slew up and down. The reason why these are important for you in the here and now is that Jester 2.0 rather, does not have any kind of interface that works well with the targeting pod. So it is kind of a pilot-driven affair if you're operating with Jester. Otherwise, if you have a human backseater, they will take care of this for you and can operate the pod accordingly. There are a few limited Jester options for the pod, mostly in its base acquisition mode. Is it going to be in the 12 o'clock position or the 9 o'clock position, looking at the left side of the aircraft? But it is, for the most part, your work and effort on this one. I do recommend adjusting the brightness of your screen to make sure that the center of it is not blown out. The half action on the trigger cycles the pod between a fixed mode, where it is like in snowplow, pointed ahead of the jet, and turning on its tracking mode, where it will be steerable and can be employed. The full action on the trigger will turn on the laser, make it ready for use. And the challenge button will cycle the zoom between a narrow field of view and the wide field of view setting. We're extending a little bit here, so we get ourselves lined up with our target area. And we will attack the Shoka battery again, this time with a laser-guided weapon. GBU-24 is a very successful weapon system. Its fins use proportional guidance to guide its way towards the target, so it has a little bit longer range than the Teen series Waveways. Go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Half action, full action, lasers on and armed. And I like that spot about there. It's going to get tone here in a minute because I'm going to press and hold the button.
We're fast at 560.
Jester will give me speed calls because I told him that 450 was the speed that I wanted to fly in at. The advantages that the 24 has over the Teen series is the proportional guidance,
530 knots.
which allows it to keep most of its energy, and it has a little bit wider seeker head for guidance on the nose. You can see the bomb fall line is starting to get closer there. I go idle power here for a minute. I want to try and get back to 450.
Okay, there's 510.
I am nose down slightly to make sure that the bomb can find the laser very quickly.
Ooh, there's 480.
Okay, the bomb is off. Slew it. I like this guy right here. And back the zoom off here a little bit while we're cruising. So it means that the 24 has a better ability to see the laser if it's not directly spot on. Kaboom. Good hits. And turn the laser off, and we'll reset the pod. However, it is a much more expensive weapon system. The GBU Teen series that we're used to seeing that also had its start in Vietnam, like the GBU-10, the smaller GBU-12 that's pretty common in Air Force service, and the middle ground GBU-16 that's almost like Navy service, uses what's called bang-bang guidance, which you don't see that in DCS. But if they did model it, those fins that are on it would fully deflect up and down while it is guiding towards the target, which causes the bomb to wobble on its way towards the ground. Now they do model a better drag coefficient. I say better, more like a higher drag coefficient on the bomb, so that it doesn't get the benefits of the same range, and its seeker head is a little bit smaller for finding the emitted laser energy. So you do have to be closer to the mark for that weapon to see it and then guide onto it. But it's still like a 17-degree seeker head, so if you're dropping from high altitude, it's a lot more forgivable. Because that 17-degree cone is wider at the end if you're up very high and somewhat far from the target. But as you get closer to the target, you do need to be in a position where the bomb's going to fall into that capture zone. Now I am going to go ahead and tell Jester that I'm not dropping 24s anymore. I'm dropping 12s, which is going to change our drag coefficient, but all other information is the same. The bombing table really does help for the delivery of some of these weapons. And your understanding or lack thereof is going to affect your success in this jet. Now we're going to come back around, pick ourselves out another target. Our INS is probably all kerfuffled now, as we've been flying for a minute. Yeah, so there's our target area. We'll put the Pipper close to the target. Zoom in a bit, half action, full action. It's important to have a little bit of a delay there in those, but I like that piece of equipment, so pressing and hold that. What I'm doing now is I'm flying the dots that you see around the edge of my ring. And that's going to tell me if I'm lined up with where the pod is looking. A little fast, I'm just going to work the throttle a little bit.
We're at 450.
450, that's what we want. Slight nose down. Pickle. Lasers on. I'll zoom out just a little bit so I got a little bit more movement authority on the pod. And real quick, this gauge over here is another one to try and keep one eye on, as this will tell you where the pod is in its limits. Dotted lines are possible, but it's a warning. Green zone is good. Green zone is pod's got line of sight to the target. I am hands-free on the pod right now, so it is keeping that area locked. And we've struck our target. Zoom in a little bit, we can see we got some fires there, and we got at least another vehicle. So let's go ahead and take that pod out of its scan mode or search mode. Get it to snowplow again. And we'll push out, climb a little bit, turn back around, and do it again. Buddy lasing is very possible too. It's probably the safest way to drop a bomb for laser guided, both for the attacker and for the emitter, as the attacker can do weird things like pop up from afar or toss from way outside the reach and then immediately turn and leave without having to be concerned about needing to keep the laser pointed on the target, while the emitter can find a safe spot to orbit outside of the reach of those defenses and just keep illuminating the target from afar, and ideally outside of the reach of such systems. And while those pieces of armor are smoking and smoldering, we'll go ahead and find ourselves another target. check these MTLBs.
We're going 510.
Going very fast.
20 knots.
Pickle. Bomb is falling. Bomb is hooked. Keep that on the point. You can maneuver a bit with this pod, but just keep in mind that there's only so much room that the pod's auto tracking will maintain. And there's only so much effort the Wizzo can put into steering it to keep it on target manually. It is a lot more hands-on of a pod compared to Lantern or some of the others. Let's see how our fuel cells are looking here. That centerline tank is completely used up. Most of our internal cells are done. Just trying to pull from the centerline tank, but it's empty, so it's not going to be of any use. Go and shut that pump off. Got 2 more bombs left. I do like using the paved spike pod. It is a lot of fun. But again, you definitely want to make sure that you use the bomb computer.
Stops at 480. Speed 460.
Try to maneuver here a little bit. And that is a dead BMP. Now you can maintain a position with the pod. I'm going to try and keep my eyes there with the pod as I turn it around, so long as we keep it in the green. As you can see, when we bring it into the dotted line area, we run the risk of looking through the airframe. And potentially losing the spot that we were looking at. So we're just going to go ahead and snow plow it. Build up some knots. And we'll try and attack one of those tanks again. We know that there were some more in that zone. I think I see him. Looks like he's right there-ish. Bomb is hooked. It's wobbling there towards the target. Check armor. So yeah, to review, right control Bravo, pull up that bombing table, use your target find mode, select the weapon you're going to be employing, give it a run-in speed and true airspeed, determine your release height, and it's a laser guided weapon, so it doesn't have to be exact, but the closer you are to it, the better and more accurate your Kipper information is going to be. And make sure that you set your target altitude. That part's important. If you're playing somewhere like Cold War Germany as a map, it's a little, I don't want to say it's a little less important because that's not true. It's important even if the altitude is very low. But most of Germany is very low altitude, like sub 1,000 feet. It's very, very flat sort of terrain. It's got its hills, it's got its little mountains and valleys and things, and those have some altitude to it, and those are important to make sure that you change. But by and large, if you set for like a 300-foot altitude, you're going to hit most of the targets that you're looking at across Germany. But someplace like Nevada or Afghanistan or any place that's got a lot of mountains or vastly different terrain, like to give you an example, we come out here to Vegas and look at Nellis, it's 1845 feet above sea level. And yeah, if I come look at Mount Charleston, it's 10,000 feet above. But even just out where we were is 4,000 feet. This is 3,000 feet higher elevation than where we took off from. If your bombing tables and everything else is dependent upon that being, 4,000 feet lower than what it actually is, then the point that you're actually looking at to release the bomb is going to overshoot the target almost every time. You're not going to get good guidance. You're not going to have, accurate weapons employment, and it's going to make you have to be very close to the target, much closer than you should be, to try and release the bomb, which then makes it harder for you to follow it with the pod. Like, I was one initially when using the PAVE spike pod of, this is an extremely difficult instrument to use. And it's because I wasn't using it correctly. I wasn't making use of the bombing table. I wasn't setting up the target altitude right, which is all information that the onboard systems use to determine when the bomb should fall off the jet, where the bomb fall line is. And I think we can maybe illustrate an example here of that. Let's pick a spot. Let's pick a known spot. Creech Air Force Base, middle of Creech, 3126 feet. I'm going to dial it in correctly. 3120 feet, close. That's in the boundaries of close enough. There's our air base here to the left. Go ahead and bump up to 15,000 feet or so.
What's our fuel at, buddy?
Our fuel's at not your concern, Jester. We're okay. And I'm going to go ahead and capture and lock that point. And right now it looks like
Speed 410.
everything that we've done so far, bomb fall line is slowly coming down. But if I was to come back here and change this to 0, like I haven't touched anything with it,
Copy.
it's not going to give me the same
430.
proper release cues. It's going to be expecting that what I'm looking at right now is 3,000 feet lower than what it is. So instead of my aim point being here, it could be all the way out here. 3,000 feet, like you're looking at a little over half a mile's difference in terms of where your aim point is versus where the bomb is thinking it needs to go. Right now is telling me I'd need to release that bomb set for 0, but it's going to overshoot the target because I should have released that bomb back here. So if you're flying the F-4, whether you're using a human backseater or jester, the bombing table is critical, as that's going to give you the information that you need to properly set it up in the jet. If I were to jump into the back seat here for a moment, drag coefficient 1.22. Drag coefficient 1.22. See it right there. And he does actually employ and change things on this page and panel to make sure that it is accurate and provide good steering information back to me for dropping weapons where they need to go. Oh, right, I had the target altitude set in properly. Let's go back to like 3460 feet.
We'll go.
Tell Jester and close. I'm going to give him a minute to make that adjustment. Jump back here. And we can see that he has dialed in the altitude or roughly what I set it to, because it's, feet times 100. So instead of 3460, we're going to move that decimal point over 2. And it is 34 and about a half. It's about as close as you can get on it. But he's dialing the range in based on what I've told him. He's dialing the drag coefficient based on what I told him. And you can even do things like setting a release advance and distance to target for all of those features and things as well, which are all just as important. So whether you're working with a backseater or whether you are on your own, using the bombing computer is a core component to success for dropping laser-guided bombs or even dropping iron bombs over a specified waypoint. Of course, the rest of that is also subject to whether or not your INS is in alignment, because it does drift over time. So unless you're putting in corrections mid-flight, you might run the risk of bombing the wrong sort of spot. But having that information is critical, just as it is for the loft mode for the Shrike that we used earlier to kill the SA-6. If we don't have the altitude of our intended target set correctly, then we're not going to achieve the result of destroying this site with a Shrike. Because our altitude is going to be off. It's going to make us miss, by a margin that is large enough to not to be useful. Okay, let's go ahead and configure ourselves for landing, as no sortie is complete until we have made it home. You can go so far as to turn the various lights on. As this should be the final landing of the morning. We'll save our weapon systems for now. With the conclusion of the guided missile and guided bomb portion of it for Phase 3 of my Pilum Teaches F-4 lessons, we're going to be moving on to air-to-air for Phase 4. And trying out some advanced tactics and things in Phase 5 for dealing with various types of systems and emplacements. How I would go about trying to attack some of these different places. Getting in low, popping up, using direct mode with the Shrike. Because direct mode is very handy with the Shrike as compared to loft. When you are in close on the site, have clear line of sight to the site, and it's got an emitter that is just lighting up the night sky. As long as you've got those things going for it, you can probably get that Shrike on target. And again, at the very least, close enough that you're going to be able to put on a Woolly Pete charge and follow that up with some iron bombs. Phase 6 is going to be doing a lot of these things at night and dropping marker flares and things like that to illuminate a target area and provide for good follow-up hits. And talk about the challenges of flying the aircraft at night. So stay tuned week to week for those sorts of things. And when those are all done, those will get posted back up onto YouTube. You can kind of watch all of those together. Some of the things that I'm looking to put in there as well, and this might make it to some of the videos that we're going to be doing here over the next few weeks, is making use of loft and offset bombing modes. I just need to practice a little bit more with those so I can dial my own accuracy up before I come by and teach the rest of you. Next week, though, is going to be all about the air-to-air. And if I can manage it, we'll see if I can get Trigger back up, as this is early evening for him, where it is early to mid-morning for me. As long as our time zones match up, we'll be able to have him along for the ride as well. Raise our seat up. Flaps are coming down, retrimming the aircraft. Trimming the aircraft is generally a thing that you will always be doing
And gear, flaps,
in any non-fly-by-wire machine.
anti-skid.
So if you don't have those keys bound someplace where you can get at them and make the adjustments you need,
500.
you're going to find flying the aircraft to be a little bit of a challenge. You spend more time fighting the machine rather than using the trim tabs to take care of business for you. A little short. Still on pavement at least. Rogue chute deployed. Flaps coming up. Gotta say, I'm very happy with the new throttle. A little bit of getting used to where some of the buttons are compared to the X56 I was using before. Not that there was anything wrong with the 56, it's just found something that was better. Decided to give myself a treat for reaching follower goals and things like that. go and activate our air conditioning. And bring our seat down a little bit. And as usual, we'll park over by the Thunderbird hangar. For our air-to-air mission, we're going to be on Syria rather than our familiar NTTR, as I've built a mission that will allow me to spawn an array of aircraft to go up against.
Roger. And wheel chocks are in, sir. Roger.
And our steps are down. Engine master switch is off, engine throttle to detent. Gen switch is off. Okay. Golden Dark. Been a good flight here today. Certainly an enjoyable time. And as far as our upcoming events go, we should have a normal week here this week. We are looking at some DCS time here on Tuesday, with some classic games as well. Friday we'll be back for Arma 3 Anastasi fighting the Galactic Empire as definitely not Star Wars type troops, so it's an interesting offset. And Saturday we'll be back with Pilum Teaches DCS starting at 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And that is going to be focused on air-to-air for Phase 4, which should be a good time. With that, folks, always ask for consent. Try to communicate as best you can with your partners. Try to be genuinely decent human beings. And we'll catch up with you next time. Thanks for watching, folks. Pilum out.